So I'd like to thank you for joining me again. For the first part, can you please explain a little bit about yourself for those who don't know who you are?
Yeah, my name is Yanniv Frank. I am a professional puppeteer. I have been puppeteering since I was a kid. I honestly when people ask me "Oh, how'd you get into puppetry?" That's so unique. I honestly have no answer for that question because I don't remember my life before puppets. Um, so I started building my own puppets in middle school, and then um, working my way through college, I did my senior thesis project, making a bunch of puppets and doing a workshop of Honk, the Ugly Duckling musical, with puppets as my senior thesis. And then after college, went to grad school and got my MFA in puppet arts from University of Connecticut. And that program was super awesome. And since then, since graduating, I have been working full time as a professional puppeteer.
That's awesome. And so currently you're in the Hungry Caterpillar play off Broadway. And
Yes.
so how does this show compare to other shows that you've done being a puppeteer?
Yeah, so I feel very lucky because every show that I've done professionally so far has been very different and have been very different styles of puppetry. Um, Very Hungry Caterpillar has 75 puppets in the show. And it's a 45-minute show, so we really pack all those puppets into a short period of time. Like every moment, there's a new puppet
How
popping
many
up on
puppeteers
screen.
are there?
There's three in the show, but we have seven in the cast. So we have a rotating cast, so not everyone is in every performance.
So three puppeteers controlling 70.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So it's pretty cool. These puppets are um, they're called direct manipulation puppets for most of the ones that we use in Caterpillar, meaning that we as the puppeteers have our hands directly on the puppets. We do have a couple rod puppets in the show, but for the most part, they're all direct manipulation. But then there have been other shows that I've worked on that have had remote control puppets, that have had more specifically rod puppets, that have been moving mouth, hand, and rod puppets. So everything is a little different. But Caterpillar, we have that direct manipulation, and then also I really love that we really get to interact with the audience in Caterpillar, and the audience is, it's a kids show,
Yeah.
so we have very excited, very engaged audiences that we get to interact with, which is super fun.
And I mean, you don't have late shows either, which is pretty nice because it's a kid show, correct?
Yeah,
Oh
so
yeah.
there's a performance going on right now. I'm just not scheduled for it. But yeah, on Sunday mornings we have 9 a.m. as our earliest show.
That's crazy. And so you mentioned that there's different types of puppets. So what is your favorite type of puppet to walk with and why?
Hmm. That's a tough one. My answer used to be hands down moving mouth, hand and rod puppet. Um, and I still love those, and they are my my first entryway into puppetry. Um, Gosh, that might still be the answer. I love direct manipulation also. I would say those two are my favorites to do.
That's awesome. And so what's the hardest puppet to walk with? Because I understand some puppets are bigger than others, like Audrey 2 when you did Little Shop. That's a giant one. So what's the hardest type to walk with?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, anything that's that big is gonna be hard to work with. Um, because, I would say the hardest puppets to work with are puppets that have been built without movement in mind. Like a lot of times there will be puppets that are built as they're these huge, beautiful, beautiful sculptures, but sometimes weren't considering the movement and the design of the puppet. And so those would be very challenging to move because, the whole art of puppetry is all about movement and about animating the inanimate. So when you have something that's beautiful but super heavy or not very ergonomic, that gets really challenging to move. The best puppets are always the ones that, are very lightweight and have a very fluid motion to them that you
The
can really
smaller
get.
ones.
Yeah, you can really get that full
Yeah.
expression.
And that's awesome. And so this past summer you worked with AJR, and so can you please tell us a little bit about your experience with AJR?
Yeah, so I was a last minute replacement on their tour this summer. I think I got the call, flew out to Pittsburgh, rehearsed, and was put into the show, and then performed that night in front of I think like 11,000 people, all within like 4 days or something, which is quite the whirlwind. It was super cool. I definitely felt like I got to get like a little taste of the rock star life this summer. We were traveling to different cities every day, sleeping on a tour bus, seeing the country and getting to perform for so many people was super cool. And the puppet was super awesome, and our team was great. Um, we we were also the props and the wardrobe department. So we really got to have our hands on a lot of things, and it was super cool.
Yeah, that's great. So you said that was a for you that you were a last minute addition. And so had you auditioned for that or did they just contact your agent? How did that work?
It was through somebody that I had worked with before.
Cool. And so with being a puppeteer in New York, what are some of the challenges and what are the good things about being a puppeteer?
The greatest thing I think about being a puppeteer here in the city is the community of it. The puppetry world is not very big. I it's funny, like when somebody mentions the name of a puppeteer and I haven't heard that name before, that's when I get surprised. It's such a small world. Um, and especially here in New York, there's such a sense of community among puppeteers, which is so lovely. We have the New York Puppetry Guild here that is basically just a big group of puppeteers who live in the area who get together every couple months to just, hang out with other puppeteers, talk about puppets, and just have fun, which is super great and so lovely. So yeah, the community is my favorite thing about being a puppeteer here in the city, and that there's so many kinds of puppetry here in New York. So there's always something new and to see, and always something new to try, which is awesome as a puppeteer.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's so many shows nowadays that have puppeteers and puppets in them. You go to Lion King, Little Shop, and so I mean, it's also cool seeing all the other shows. And speaking of shows, what is a show that you hope to work on as a puppeteer in the future?
Yeah, my like dream show to work on as a puppeteer is Amelie the musical. I first saw that show when it was on Broadway back in like 2017 and absolutely adored it. It is just an uplifting show. There's like there isn't really anything terribly sad about it, but it's not overtly cheerful either. It's just uplifting, which I absolutely love. And then when I saw it in London, because I took a trip to London just to see this show.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I took a
Okay.
3 day trip to London when it was on the West End because I had seen promotional videos of it and it just looked so beautiful. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna regret it forever if I don't go see this. So I did go see it, and I don't remember if they had a lot of puppetry in the Broadway version, but they had a lot of puppetry in the West End version. And I would love to work on that show either as a performer, but also as a designer or puppet builder or puppet captain. I would absolutely love to work on that show, regardless of where it is, because it's not on Broadway anymore. It's not in
Yeah.
London anymore. But anywhere that I can do Amelie, I would absolutely love to.
That's great. And so you've toured before with concerts and then you've been on off-Broadway. And so do you prefer touring or being in one location like an off-Broadway setting?
Yeah, I prefer doing an off-Broadway run. I just love New York so much, and this really feels like my home. So I love performing for New York audiences as well. Um, but touring has its own charm too. Like I've done two tours now and have really enjoyed both of them, and it's a super cool way to get to see other parts of the country that you maybe never would have gone to. Now, since finishing AJR, now there are more states that I have been to than states that I haven't been to,
That's
which
great.
is awesome to be
Yeah.
able to say that and to be able to have those experiences is awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. And were you a fan of Asia before doing the tour, or were you just thrown in and then listen to the music?
I was pretty much thrown in. I had heard of them and I had heard a couple of their songs, but I didn't know them super well. But, having done the tour now, I'm much more familiar with their stuff.
Yeah, I mean, how was getting to play Madison Square Garden? I mean, that was
Oh my
probably
gosh.
the
That was awesome. And
yeah.
so like the most iconic venue that you could possibly think of. And we sold out two nights. And my family is here, so my girlfriend and my brother came on our first night at MSG, and it was just so cool. It was so, so cool.
And that was Jack's dream too, right? Jack Ryan.
Yeah,
Jack.
yeah, I think so because they're from New York.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. And so what advice would you give to your younger self if you could go back in time and give him advice?
Um, I think the best advice that I could give to my younger self is to really stick with it. Um, there were moments along the way that people, either peers or even like some of my teachers who were not in the arts, would like question what I was doing. Like I've always known that I wanted to be a puppeteer. I came to career day in first grade dressed up as Jim Henson. So like I've always known that this was the path that I wanted. Um, and there were people along the way who were trying to be helpful and thought they were being helpful, who would say
What they want.
yeah, like what are you going to do with that? How are you going to
Yeah.
make money with that? How are you going to have a consistent uh, income with that and a steady lifestyle? And there were a couple times that like it was people very close to me, and it wavered my confidence a little bit, but I I stuck with it, and I'm so glad I did because this is what I've always dreamed of doing, and because I stuck with it and fully committed to it is the reason that I've been fortunate enough to do it professionally. So, and that goes for anybody who, regardless of if it's in the arts or any other lifestyle that is really your dream, if if you stick with it, that is the greatest gift you can give to yourself. Even if other people don't quite understand it, stick with it. It will pay off for you.
That's great. And so we're gonna do a couple of rapid fire questions,
Okay.
puppet edition.
Oh, great.
And so because the Hunger Caterpillar is the country you're walking on, what is one children's book that you hope or that you would like to see be turned into a puppet play, and who would you play in it?
Oh, um, so I have this dream of writing a musical of Charlotte's Web and doing it with puppets. Um, I it has been a dream that has been like in the works for a few years. And like I've even written one of the songs. Right now it's just a passion project, I I think that that is more of a down the line kind of goal, but
I mean, you'll also have to wait for it to come out of public domain.
right,
So
for
I mean,
sure.
that's also hard because there's so many good children's books that'd be great to be turned into plays with puppets, but like public domain's there, and you gotta get like all these laws and
Exactly.
stuff.
So that's why it's a down the line goal. But who knows? Maybe, I mean, I don't know the exact date that it comes into the public domain, but probably like 20-ish years from now. So maybe you'll be seeing that show in 2045.
That's awesome. And so, what Muppet is most like you, and
Hmm.
why?
Um, I would say that Ernie is most like me, because he has a heart of gold, but he is also a little bit of a trickster, and I like to keep things fun and have you know have jokes and keep things fun and funny. But I also at my core, the most important thing to me is uplifting people and making people feel special and feel important. So I think I really identify with Ernie in that way.
That's awesome. And so, is there a puppeteer that is a big inspiration to you? Like, is the one that really sticks out among everyone else?
Yeah, my answer for that is definitely Carol Spinney. He was the original puppeteer for Big Bird on Sesame Street and Oscar the Grouch. Um, he he is he wrote a memoir about his experience, you know, becoming the iconic puppeteer that he was. And he's just such a gentle soul and really just loves the magic of the puppetry, and I find that to be very inspirational.
That's awesome. And so, that after the interview today, I'd like to thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.